You know how Drake is. He grows on you like a moss on a not rolling stone, though he is a rolling stone. Anyway, guessing that's going to be cut.
Your hosts are here, Sammie and Michelle. By the end of this podcast, you'll know them well. Adulting, navigating the journey of life. Careers to relationships, pain and strife. Put down the rule book. Rethink the status quo. If there's another direction you wanna go, find purpose, passion and mastery in all that you do with Status Post Adulting.
Hey, Status Post Adulting family. This is Sammie
and Michelle,
and you're listening to the 34th episode of Status Post Adulting, where we are talking about ACT. That is, action changes things. But first, let me check in with my co-host Michelle. How are you doing, Michelle?
I'm doing lovely, Sammie. How are you?
I am doing super well. As you know, or may not know, California is having a recall election on the governor.
Oh yes, if you happen to be listening to this on the Tuesday it comes out, go vote if you're in California.
Yes, I went to go vote in the city that we reside in, and it's a smaller city than I thought, apparently, because there I was going to vote, and the person at the desk was like, "Oh, Samantha, your sister Michelle was just here yesterday. Lovely girl."
Wow, they remembered me.
They remembered Michelle, which I found creepy. In my head, I thought, if you stalk my sister, I will kill you and your family.
You have a problem. It's called basic kindness.
But I did find it friendly. And yeah, they remembered Michelle. They said she was nice. She was there yesterday. I did my voting thing, and that is done. And most importantly, we got a sticker. And that's why we do these things, because apparently we don't get stickers for shots anymore when I get my vaccine, but I can still get a sticker when I vote.
I actually did get a sticker when I got my vaccine.
Stop.
Yeah, you need to go to nicer places. No offense.
That's literally the clinic that I work at, so we'll work on getting stickers.
No, you won't. Anyway, moving on to our topic today. A mantra that Sammie and I often repeat to each other, which she started, ACT. Action changes things. Which is exactly what it sounds like. You need to act, because action changes things.
It's so true, Michelle. We often ponder about what we want to do, or we set goals about things we want to do in the future, and we don't take the basic little first step that's needed to be taken to get to the goal. And not taking that little first step is what prevents us from ever even coming close to reaching that goal.
Definitely, Sammie. And the reason we wanted to talk about it a little bit today is because even though it's a simple concept, sometimes just hearing and having the mantra, action changes things, helps to make a huge difference. I, for one, am a huge procrastinator. Sammie will often see that I'm stressed out because I have a big project at work or something going on. And sometimes I'll express this, sometimes I'll just be moody. And she always says to me, you know what? Act. Action changes things. Which really means get your butt and start doing the work, because procrastinating is not making you happy. Waiting to be in the right mood is not going to do anything for you. By actually starting and getting going, you're going to feel much better. It's so easy to get caught up in the details. It's easy as a maximizer to want to do things perfectly or to overthink things. And really, the best thing you can do is just get started.
It is so true, Michelle, that action does in fact change things. When I think about this, I think about our podcast. Michelle and I had thought about having a podcast for probably months to a year before we ever started a podcast, but we eventually came to the conclusion that we really just needed to act. That first little action was, for us, getting a microphone. And then that second little action was recording literally anything. And we recorded something that we thought would be an episode for our future podcast. We recorded probably 2 or 3 future episodes, none of which ever ended up on our podcast because they were quite low quality. They were okay, but not on the standard to be on this podcast. But by recording those episodes, we learned about editing. We learned about what software we needed. We learned about a bunch of things that needed to be known in order to start a podcast. We could try researching those things beforehand, but the truth is, actually doing the action is what really makes you learn things fast and really helps you know exactly what is the next step that you need to know.
Absolutely, Sammie. The podcast is a great example because that's when we really realized, while actually recording and starting to work on the podcast, what problems we encounter, what things we wanted to work on. We were able to really start to develop and grow even before we put our first episode out because we were actually doing some of the work. And then, quite honestly, you, Sammie, were like, hey, let's start doing this. Let's push out our first episode and let's get started. And that has made all the difference. And now we have all of you, lovely listeners, tuning in every Tuesday.
It really is great, Michelle. And another example I think of when I think of action-changing things is me learning Spanish. When I first started my job 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago, yikes, I did not know any Spanish. And most of my patients speak Spanish. So needless to say, that's a bit inconvenient. And over time, I did start to pick up some Spanish, but certainly not enough where I would feel comfortable doing appointments by myself. So I knew I had to take action. I had tried Duolingo and things, and that helps a little bit, but I knew I really had to take more serious action. I saw that San Francisco Community College had free classes for residents. And I thought, well, hey, I should sign up for that. So I did. I started going to classes, I think 2 or 3 times a week, and it was Spanish 1, and I noted that I was making very slow progress. You have to understand, people, I'm trying to learn Spanish to speak functionally at my job. And Spanish 1, then Spanish 2, then Spanish 3, 4, etc. It just wasn't going to cut it. So I ended up getting a private Spanish tutor after that Spanish 1 class, and that quickly accelerated my progress. He immediately recognized that the thing I didn't know was verbs. I know lots of nouns because I'm learning the nouns at work, but I needed to learn all the verbs and how to use them. So we went through the verb tenses and bada bing, bada boom, now I'm speaking Spanish at work and it's amazing. But I had to do those first steps first. By signing up for the community college class, I then learned that I needed something that was faster paced. I wouldn't really have realized that beforehand, and I could have hemmed and hawed all day about what's the most efficient way to learn Spanish, but instead I took the free class because it didn't seem to have a high loss, and I learned that that wasn't going to be the path, and I found a new path. And it's funny because a lot of my coworkers who I've been working with are like, oh, you know Spanish. Like, I want to learn Spanish too. And they want to know how to do it. And the truth is, the way to do it is by doing the first step, which is, in their case, I give them my Spanish tutor's information, so they even have a shortcut. But it is calling him and setting up that first class. It's all about taking that first action. We can't predict all the different ways that things can go, but we do have to take that first step.
The do something instead of waiting lesson, Sammie, is so key here. There are different things that we have going on in our life, different goals that we want to achieve, where I truly believe most of us can say to ourselves, okay, I'm dragging my feet and I need to A.C.T, act. To me, it seems like this is lifted from Newton's first law, which speaks about inertia, which basically is something at rest stays in rest and something in motion stays in motion. And so if you're not doing something, if you're not moving towards a goal, if you haven't taken that first step, you're not going to get the momentum that you need to keep going. But by taking the first step, even if it's not the perfect first step, you are putting yourself on the trajectory to accomplish this goal, usually in ways that you can't even imagine.
You bring up a really great point, Michelle, when you say that we should do something instead of waiting. And a lot of times when it comes to taking on whatever project or thing that you want to do, we get a little overwhelmed by all the steps that may be required to complete a task. When that happens, I try to think of the smallest thing. Like, what is the smallest step that I need to take right now to get closer to getting this action done? For example, if it's going on a run, I'm like, you need to put your socks on and you need to put your workout clothes on. Or if it's something like getting my extra work tasks done, I'm like, pull out your laptop and plug it in. The most smallest and basic step is what I start with to just get myself in that flow. Once you get maybe 5-6 steps in, you find that you start knowing what to do. The truth is you would have never gotten there if you didn't take that first, very small action.
Exercise is such a great example, Sammie. I remember when I got into cycling, it was actually July 4th, and we had decided the day before. We knew we lived near SoulCycle. We kept talking about how we might try it one day, and we literally just decided the night before that we'd just go to the 6 a.m. class. And after that, I consistently went every week for, I think, almost a year, if not longer. This was pre-pandemic. And also, the day we went to that 6 a.m. class, I had been texting a woman on Bumble BFF, and I said, hey, we're going to the 6 a.m. class tomorrow if you want to join us. And she did. She knew she wanted to make friends, and she pulled the trigger and decided to join us for the class. And we ended up building a friendship after that because she was willing to take action and do something on the fly with us. It sounds like little things, but it's amazing how doing something small like that will kickstart so many better habits. Going cycling once meant I was open to going to cycling twice. Going many times meant that I wanted to eat better, meant that I wanted to try other forms of exercise. And all of that snowballed into creating a better lifestyle. But how many times before that did I think, oh, I should exercise more? I should do these things? It was so much harder because I wasn't doing it and it seemed like a lot to get started.
I love that, Michelle. And I love it because I think it really shows how every time we take an action that's in the direction we want to go, we plant seeds in the garden of the person we want to become. And I like to think of it as a seed as well because it grows so many other habits. When you know you have to exercise the day before, you're going to hydrate and drink a lot of water and maybe avoid icky foods and alcohol and things that are going to make you feel really crappy during a workout. You're going to make sure you go to bed on time. All these other things start coming together when you start making a choice in the direction that you want to go.
So the takeaway is built into the mantra, action changes things. Take action on something that is in your land of, I should do this, I should do that. Change your shoulds into action.
Exactly, Michelle. And we also want to introduce a new segment to our podcast, which is called Content Corner.
Yeah, Sammie and I have been talking about how we consume different forms of content every week. A lot of times our friends recommend different podcasts or books or such to us. And so we thought it would be fun to share something that we listened to or read, some piece of content that we thought was worth mentioning. Do you have something this week, Sammie?
This week, I definitely know what I want to talk about, and that is from Mystic Michaela's Know Your Aura podcast. She had an episode this week called A Spiritual Take on Burnout, which I thought was super interesting. Being a healthcare professional, people are always talking about burnout. In that setting, we usually talk about how we deal with a lot of stressful things or just have overall a lot of work to do. And when you do this day after day, this can lead to burnout, feeling frustrated with your job, and just overall overwhelmed. What I really like is on Mystic Michaela's podcast this week, she talks about burnout and she relates it to aura colors, but she talks about how burnout can actually be a sign that we are spiritually misaligned with what we are doing. To some degree, our spirit guide is trying to tell us, hey, enough of that, you did enough of that, you're doing good, but it's time to change directions. And I really appreciated this take on burnout because sometimes I feel like that's the big thing that's missing from a lot of conversations about burnout.
Yes, Amy, I know you're excited about that episode because you woke me up yapping about it. And while I appreciate the enthusiasm, once again, I do like to sleep in the morning. But I did listen to the episode as well, and I really enjoyed it. So I would recommend it to anybody who thinks they might be experiencing any burnout. It's a really interesting take and look at the subject.
Exactly, Michelle. It was a really great episode. It was a look at burnout from a spiritual perspective. Overall, it was super interesting and we do recommend y'all check it out. And please give us your thoughts, or if you have some piece of content, a podcast, a book, etc., a piece of music, anything, please email us or DM us on Instagram to let us know what it is. We would love for you to share that with us because we love listening to new content. And you can email us at statuspostadulting@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram at statuspostadulting.
If you send us music, don't send us the new Drake album. I've listened to Certified Lover Boy. It's fine. It's not my taste. It's not bad. I'm saying it's just not something I was really in love with, but we can skip that one.
Most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and rethink the status quo.